Hi, welcome to episode number 2. In this episode, I will be covering the ride vehicle, which I built for my attraction. And before you build any type of car, what you want to do is figure out what the theme is for your ride. So depending upon what your theme is, what design you want to use. So kind of, what I did is I scribbled out some ideas and just wrote things down. And also saw what other people did online to give me some ideas. And so what I came down with is that I kind of personalized it to my own taste, because I'm a big guy, I'm 6'4", and I wanted to be able to sit in this comfortably and enjoy the ride. Because there's some rides, especially even at theme parks, you go all the way, you go to a theme park, and you're a big guy and you get in this car and your knees are against the front, or something's in the way, and it's really uncomfortable. So I said, you know what, I want to have fun in this. So what I did is I took a chair, I got a folding chair, and a 2x4 piece of plywood, half-inch plywood. I set it on the ground, sat the chair down, had a seat, and then I got a piece of wood and I kind of marked off where the height where I want to put my hands, where things would be comfortable, where the sides of my hip were and my back and everything. And then I kind of sketched it out, and it gave me the idea to go ahead and just kind of contour it out. And then also, like I said, seeing other people online's designs, that kind of gave me a little more idea of what I wanted to do. And my theme was actually like a homemade dark ride from the past, like the old carnival dark rides. So I decided to go ahead with this shape right here. And so I'll show you how it works here. And here it is. So for the lap bar, I used 1-inch aluminum tubing. And so I basically just put it together with all thread. So I got all thread going through, and this is a just a tubular aluminum. And at the bottom as well, I got all thread. And then on the bottom of the ride vehicle, to keep from cutting through the wood, I installed these right here, these little brackets right here, these Samson brackets that actually hammer onto the wood, and I drilled a hole through so it'll accommodate the all thread. And it makes, when it's all together, it makes a nice sturdy safety bar. So, and then what I did here is I wanted to have access to all my components inside, like the batteries and everything. And if there's any problems, I can get to them. So I went ahead and I put a hinge. I have a hinged seat. And as you can see, all my major framing is just 2x2s. And all the outside shell is half-inch plywood. So super simple, super cheap. This handle right here was an afterthought. It was actually, it actually went to some rolling cabinets that I had, some toolboxes that I inherited. So I thought, you know what a great grab handle, right? And it kind of adds a little extra to it. So I thought that was pretty nice. So what I did was, from the first episode, I showed you the chassis with the transaxle. Basically what I did on this one is, this one was a little bit different design, so it was a little bit smaller. So I just went ahead and used the existing screws that hold it into place, and I placed it on top of the plywood. I traced out the frame, and I drilled the holes out, and then I actually measured out the tires, and I cut out the holes for the tires and the transaxle to fit through. Now the tricky part was, when I originally did it, I had the casters put on, the 4 casters. I got one here, and same on the other side. When I first did it, I thought, okay, we'll just go ahead and put the transaxle even with the little caster wheels, and we're all set. But come to find out that when I put it down on the actual track to test it out, since these were supporting the weight, there wasn't enough extra grip from the tires on this. So the tires, when you come around the corner, would start spinning on me. So what I had to do about, I think 2 or 3 times, I had to actually add little washers as spacers to actually lower it down a little bit further than the casters by maybe like a 1/4 inch or so. So that way, once the weight's fully on there, it gives the drive wheel enough traction to go around all the different corners if it gets stuck anywhere. So that really helped a lot, but it was a little bit of work. So that's kind of the fine adjustments. That's the most, I think that's the hardest part I had to do, is figure out the actual ride height for the transaxle. The other thing I had to do was, with these casters, I had to actually move them 2 different times because of the track that I designed. So that's something that's part of the testing. When you start testing these things, I made a little circle test track, which I did a lot of driving both directions, and then I made some adjustments. And then from there, I started making other curves, and that's when I started realizing that my wheels are binding up and getting caught. So I actually had to move them 2 different times Just the front ones. The rear ones have been fine. It's just the front ones since I'll show you in a minute here the bottom part, like you see where I actually had to make adjustments. But that was one of my biggest challenges, is figure out where the support wheels are going to have to be for the little casters. So the rest of it is kind of straightforward. I have the speed control right here. That's the speed control I showed you on the other video. And then that connects over here to the remote switch, which I also showed you. And to get a better connection, because these have about a 300-foot range, but due to the noise from the motor and other electrical noise, it kind of shortens the range. So I wanted to make sure I had plenty of communication. So what I did is I ran the antenna wire through the wood to the outside of the vehicle where the remote control on the control panel was going to be. So I didn't have any problems with the communication, which worked out really nice. So then the other components I have here actually came from the scooter. It's a 25 amp breaker, so if it overloads, it'll pop the breaker. So then it'll kind of save everything from catching a fire or blowing up. That's actually a safety that was built into the scooter. So the other thing I added was I went ahead and put an emergency stop, which will actually cut the power off to the speed control and between the speed control and the batteries. That way, if there's a problem where it gets caught in the track or something malfunctions, I can have someone quickly run up, either kick or hit the stop button, and that will actually stop the ride vehicle immediately in the tracks. So that's one of the big safeties I put in, since we're going to be dealing with the public and everybody else. That was a big one. So the extra electronics I have on here is that the e-stop that I purchased was actually a 10 amp, and I needed to cut off 30 amps. So I went ahead and I got this adapter that converts it from 24 volts to 12 volts, so I can actually cut it off with a relay. So I actually integrated a 12 volt relay to cut off the power. So once you hit the emergency stop, it hits the relay, activates the relay, which cuts off the power. So that's kind of one of my fail-safes on the ride vehicle. The other thing I added was a voltmeter, a digital voltmeter. That way I can keep track from just a glance. I can see what the power looks like and how things are going. So I can see the condition of my batteries. But also you can watch the ride vehicles. As they get a little closer to start winding down, they start getting a little bit slower and slower. So you'll see that if you run it like a lot, like I said, we had about 400 people, and they just started slowing down. So they were doing pretty well with the 20 amp batteries. So the remote control, the power goes from the batteries into the remote control, which goes into the speed control, which goes to the motor. So it's pretty straightforward. So in this video here, this shows the tracking of the vehicle as it's going around the track. This is one of my tests I was doing, and as you can see, as it come around, you can see I had to make sure I had the height correct for the tracking as well. So not only do you have to worry about the transaxle tires actually gripping on the ground, you also got to worry about it tracking correctly. So as you can see, as it comes around, it's pretty much centered exactly on the pecs. So you have a nice perfect connection on there, and it tracks beautifully. So that's worked really well. And I really once I actually, when I first started, I put smaller like inline skate wheels, and I realized they were too thin, so it was a little bit tougher. But I got through it, and I decided to put the bigger wheels. Once I put the bigger wheels on there, I had no problems. So it pretty much like lined itself up. The only other problem I had was on one of the other ride vehicles that I used a different transaxle on it, and it actually had like a little support cross member coming down on it. And that one I actually had to notch it out a little bit to clear the track, because it had to bring it down low enough. So, and the track was a little bit taller because of the tracking. So because of those two, I actually had the cut out just a little notch in the on that little arch on the transaxle support, and it didn't really affect the transaxle. That was from a Ranger scooter, not from a Go-Go. This one and my other ride vehicle that I use for Halloween and everything, those two, I had no problems. There was no clearance issues or anything. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next part. I'll show you the bottom of the ride vehicle and what it looks like. So now, looking at the bottom, you can see how I have it set up here. It's pretty straightforward. I just have the 4 casters, which support the weight of the ride vehicle. I remember I was telling you how I had to adjust them. Originally they were up here, as you can see. Then I had to move them back over. I had to move them outward toward the outside of the vehicle. At one on these, if you have someone big like me going on there, because I weigh like what 260 pounds or more, it's kind of rough on this thing since it's just bent in a vise. It's 16 gauge. So what I did is I added these little brackets on here and beefed it up. And once I did that, this thing's bulletproof. Oh, I also put a plate on the bottom here to stiffen this so it won't curve or bend on you. So it'll stay perfectly straight, as you can see by these washers here. So I added a plate here and then angle brackets here, and this thing's bulletproof. I mean, it's nothing even flinches on this thing now. And this, like I said, this is your tracking. So here's the drive axle, like I was saying. The other thing I had to do as far as adjustments for that S-curve I was telling you about, not only did I have to move these casters, I also had to add a plate onto the transaxle, because when it's coming to one of the corners, it would kind of bind up a little bit. So what I did is I just got a little steel plate, a real thin one. I used the existing screws that were on here, and then I just greased it, and I greased those parts of the track, and it had no problems. I had nobody get stuck, and when I was doing the demo, when I was trying it, I was testing it, I had a couple times when people would get stuck there. Part of it would be the speed, because depending on the person with this type of ride vehicle, depending on the person, how heavy they are and how big they are, how fast this ride vehicle will go. So the lighter the person, obviously, the quicker it's going to go. So when you get someone like me in there, you actually have to adjust the speed a little more to make it go the same speed. So because of that, if you have it go too slow with someone that's larger like me, and you have an S-curve like I had, they can have a tendency to get caught or stuck in that one corner I had. So the other thing I did was I actually shaved down a little bit of the track. I actually got a little Dremel tool, and I trimmed it down so it's a little bit like flatter. And I did that as well as the grease, and it pretty much did the trick. So that pretty much wraps it up. So if you have any questions or other comments, I'll go ahead and leave them down below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. On the next segment, I will be talking about track design and what I utilized and how I put it together. So until next time, I will see you then.